Hey there, EB here on the Anything But Plan Weekly Update, Thursday night, 7 o'clock. Hello, everyone. I apologize for my voice. I evidently brought back some sickness from Italy, probably caught it on the plane. Want to introduce you to a very special person. Look who's in the background. Renee, my lovely wife of almost 38 years. She's going to listen to the update live. She usually doesn't do it. She usually catches the rerun clips that Caitlin Marcolet, my great producer, puts together. Caitlin's in Colorado, Denver, Colorado, with her husband Adam. Adam runs our website, and Caitlin handles all of our marketing. Us, Coco's coming in too. Renee's going to pick her up and show her to you. Um, Caitlin does all my marketing and helps me with my book and scheduling stuff and obviously scheduling the Anything But Plan weekly update. Hey, Renee, pick Coco up so they could see her. There's little Coco. Coco's going to get a surgery next to her eye in about 2 weeks. And she's got a growth that's growing that doesn't look good. And Pudge is going to get neutered. Uh, been long time since we had a male dog and had to deal with that. So, with that said, I'm going to see if I can make it through without losing my voice. Bear with me. We have so much to talk about as usual. I just read and came across the wire that Trump was able to convince Putin to do a ceasefire for a week because it's so cold in the Ukraine, and Russia has been focusing on the power grid of Ukraine, knocking him out, that he agreed for a ceasefire. So any kind of cessation of bombing both ways, I think, is a great thing, and that's a good thing that President Trump was able to accomplish. Last week, we had this historic storm that barreled across the United States, hit Tennessee hard, hit Alabama. We got very little here in Columbia, South Carolina. I drove up to Greenville yesterday for an inspection that I'm involved in some construction, and there was a ton of snow up there, but we didn't get any here. We got a little ice, and but it's just been exceedingly cold. 14,800 flights were canceled last Monday, Sunday, and Monday, and it looks like that we're going to have something called a cyclone bomb that's going to hit the East Coast this weekend, and so we're uh, in um, in the way for again more cold weather, more below freezing temperatures. We're bleeding our pipes upstairs, turning on the faucet so they don't freeze. But the big story, obviously, is the shooting in Minnesota that happened. Alex Petrie, 37-year-old ICU nurse, was shot and killed, and that's it. Shot and killed. Uh, was it murder? I'll let somebody else decide whether it was murder, but let's be clear. He had a right to bear arms, which the Republicans are always for. He had a CWP, so he had a right to carry. He never brandished his weapon. He never removed his weapon, contrary to what Christy Nome, our Department of Homeland Security, said that the head of our DHS, and Dan Bavino, who is the Border Patrol leader, he also said that Mr. Petrie brandished his weapon, pointed it at the officers, and they had to kill him in self defense. They said that he came with a purpose, with a loaded gun and two magazines. Let's step back for a second. We do remember a couple of years ago where Kyle Rittenhouse, 17-year-old kid, crossed state lines into one of the Dakotas and brought a semi-automatic rifle, and he killed, shot 4 times, a protester, and he was not convicted of murder. The Republicans hailed his right to bring a gun. We also know that at the Charlottesville protests a couple years during President Trump's first term, when he said that there were good people on both sides, when the white supremacists were marching on Charlottesville and somebody drove through the crowd and killed that lovely young woman, they were armed. President Trump didn't say at that time, if you come to protest, don't bring guns. That's what he's saying now. He's saying if you want to protest, don't bring guns. We also know that at the Michigan State House, when they were boycotting Governor Gresham Whitmer a couple of years ago, that the people who were protesting brought guns to the State House to protest. So the Second Amendment is a very important thing. I have my CWP. Renee's got her CWP. I have guns in my house. I have guns behind me in my shelf, old guns. Um, I believe in the right to bear arms. It's important. So let's be consistent, please. If the Republicans can bring them when they're protesting, then Democrats too. There is no question that Christie Nome and Bavino lied to the American people, but they didn't do that on their own. Their talking points of that Mr. Preddy uh, brandished his weapon, pointed it at the uh, Border Patrol agents and ICE came from the White House. And you know who came from? Darth Vader, Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is the one who came up with this policy of going way beyond targeting um, just the worst. And remember, that's why President Trump was elected to get rid of the worst of the undocumented immigrants, the rapists, the murderers, and the drug addicts. We're 100% for it. Go find them. If they're in jails, go take them out. If they're living amongst us, go get them. But what happened is Stephen Miller was not happy with DHS's numbers and how many people they were deporting. And so they broadened the mandate to just pick up anybody who was undocumented, which would include people who have been here for 20 years, that are friends of ours, that serve us food, that help us clean our homes, that perform vital construction services on our houses, and landscapers and people that work for other businesses on the assembly line, people who own businesses. It's not just uh, low wage workers. It's a lot of people, and I think this was the crucible that was crossed. President Trump immediately called back after the public outcry over this killing. It was an unjustified killing. There is no way that they could justify killing Mr. Preddy. They had his gun by the time they started shooting, and we learned yesterday that there were two shooters. They shot 11 times, irrespective of whether he had it coming to him. Those officers that shot their guns should be suspended. They may should be discharged. Why do I say that? Because there were six other ICE officers surrounding the body and 11 shots. Some of them could have ricocheted and killed some of the ICE officers standing there. And the ICE officers, once the shooting started, they got out of the way because they were scared. Trump said, again, you can't have guns at protests. I absolutely disagree. We now see that Stephen Miller is trying to blame Christy Nome and Bavino and Nome are saying, look, we didn't say what we said out of the clear blue. It was dictated to us by Stephen Miller, and that is true. While I don't like Christy Nome, while I think she should resign, while I think she has disgraced herself, there is no way that she would be speaking on behalf of the administration and say those things that she said before the investigation started, unless those talking points were given to her by the White House, either by Stephen Miller or by uh, Catherine Levitt, the press secretary. There's no question that Stephen Miller is the architect of this. He's backtracking. He's trying to cover his tracks. I think that Christy Nome and Bavino will be gone within a couple months. And it does look like that Stephen Miller is going to be backbenched and taken off this. President Trump did something smart. He brought in Tom Holman to take over the Minneapolis operations, and both he and Trump have said immediately that they're going to work to do a drawdown. Look, there is a place for ICE, but they need to work with law enforcement. They need to coordinate with law enforcement to pick up criminals who are drug addicts, rapists, and murderers. They need to stand back and let local law enforcement, who's trained in de-escalating these type of situations. Um, so Stephen Miller today said that he acknowledged that there possibly was a breach of protocol before Alex Preddy's shooting. Boy, it sure would have been nice if everybody held their powder and didn't say the inflammatory things they said, and that there would be an investigation. Get a load of this. There's no investigation going on the shooters on the federal level. They've been administratively suspended for 3 days with pay. Then they can come back. They're getting some psychological counseling as they should. Um, but what you're not seeing is an investigation into the shooting, not by the Civil Rights Division. DHS is going to do an investigation, but it should be done by the Civil Rights Division. But we know that Pam Bondi only carries the water for President Trump, as well as the deputy, first deputy attorney general, Todd Blanche, who was Trump's private lawyer. You're starting to see Republicans across the country that voted for Trump, that are MAGA supporters, that love him on immigration, but not this type of immigration um, um, policies. You're starting to see Sam Altman, who is a big supporter of President Trump, who's an AI guy, Victor Wembanyama, who is the 20-year-old superstar in the NBA. You're starting to see Steve Kerr and others speaking out, especially now that ICE is going to be at the Olympics. Did you hear what I just said? ICE is now going to go to the Olympics in Italy, and I'm not sure the Italians are going to weckle nice at the Italy. Trump has warned you, Iran they need to make a nuclear deal and make it quickly. He's threatening a new U.S. attack. He has sent the largest armada to the Straits of Hormuz, and those are going there to obviously tell the Iranians, hey, we mean business. Shame on the Supreme Court. I have been so disappointed. I can't remember during my legal career as how disappointed I am in this Supreme Court. I think John Roberts has totally lost control of his court. I think that John Roberts has given up. John Roberts, the Chief Justice, has not done any reform, even though Alito and Thomas have taken money from Harlan, I forget his last name, a wealthy guy, Harlan Crow, going on his boats, on junkets, on trips overseas, and they hear cases that concern his interest. It's a clear conflict of interest, the appearance of impropriety. Yet Roberts has not promulgated a Supreme Court code of conduct, and they left until the end of February when the market and the world's economy are waiting for a decision on the lawfulness or unlawfulness of President Trump's tariff program. Um, the United States has seen the slowest population growth since 2021 due to decrease in immigration. This is one thing that is resulting from no immigration coming in our country, that our borders are virtually closed. We are suffering from a population decline, but not the population decline that China is suffering from, folks. China, from last year to date, year to year, last year to this year, has suffered a 24% drop in their population. That is a real problem. That is something that Elon Musk talks about, that we need to start producing more babies. I'm not sure of that, especially with the advent of AI. I will be talking about, well, I might as well get into it. UPS last year terminated 14,000 people. This year, they're terminating 17,000 white collar jobs. They're shutting down 90 hubs, 90 different warehouses this year because UPS is getting out of delivering for Amazon. It's a probably not worth the headache. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, so to speak, because it's low margin. You're delivering a lot of packages. I represent a lot of people that do, let's say concrete or different type of services, and they don't want to work for national track builders because while it's a high volume business, it's low margin. So why take your concrete trucks to do 12, 14 different homes at a low margin that you have to do a lot of logistics and coordinating when you can do a commercial job, two or three commercial jobs and make the same amount of money and the same profit margin. So UPS is canceling those jobs. Amazon announced today they're canceling 16,000 white collar jobs. White collar, why? AI. AI is making the decisions now, not only on the assembly line, but they're doing it in the C suite. Trump is so pissed at Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, who made that speech after Trump made his pretty inflammatory speech at Davos, Switzerland last week at the Economic Forum. Carney came out and said we can't go back and have a Pollyanna view about what the world was. It's never going to be the same. The United States has changed the playing field, basically, President Trump has, and that the rest of the world can't rely on us for defense, for consistency in our treaties. And Trump, uh, in a retaliatory fashion, said that he was going to put 100% tariffs on Canada because why? Canada is doing what Europe is talking about doing. They entered into a trade deal with China for electric cars. So now China is going to bring some of their electric cars to Canada. And some of those electric cars I looked at are really slick designs. And they'll find their way into America because America is going to want those designs and access to those cars when they see that in Canada. Um, this is a sad statistic, folks. During the last 3 year war of Ukraine and Russia, 2 million soldiers between Russia and Ukraine have died. That's 2 million fathers, sons, brothers, people who have loved ones, people who will miss them. That's 2 million people because Putin wanted to be imperialistic and um, encroach and take land from Ukraine. Um, this the sonic sound that a lot of people are talking about that they heard in Cuba a couple of years ago when uh, they said that people's hearing and their brains were scrambled. They said they heard that in Venezuela and experienced that in Venezuela during the bombing a couple weeks ago. And of course, President Trump, who loves to talk, said that they used a secret, and this is what he called it, not my word, his, a discombobulator weapon. It was crucial to Venezuelan raid to capture Maduro. Now, the army has not, the armed forces haven't acknowledged it, but it's pretty interesting because for a long time, the courts as well as the military would not acknowledge that these type of sonic instruments that disrupt your hearing and your equilibrium and make you feel like you have vertigo exist. Um, Trump has encouraged the Iranians to rise up against their brutal government by saying help is on the way. Yet over 3,800 people have been killed. Upwards, the statistics say maybe 20,000. Um, the problem is Trump has now said last week he wasn't going to bomb Iran. Now he's bringing the armada. So it's conflicting signals. Um, his confrontation with NATO crossed a line, and that is um, threatening Greenland and threatening Denmark is threatening a NATO ally, which is against Article 5. Um, that is really the problem. Trump retreated last week and said that he's not going to bomb Greenland. He said that they're, a framework for a long-term agreement that will go into infinity has been reached. Now NATO and the um, European countries have said there was no such agreement reached. There were no such discussions. This is just Trump trying to save face after he stepped across the line to threaten NATO's country. Um, at this point in Trump's second term, Michael Luddick, who is the most conservative federal jurist in our country, he's the former Chief Justice of the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which was up until Obama's term, the most conservative circuit that we had on our Court of Appeals. Michael Luddick was considered for a Supreme Court seat. Um, he now was the general counsel for Airlines, who came to South Carolina. He said that Trump's presidency now is defined by purely vengeance and retribution. He said it's going to be the mother of all havoc if he lasts out 4 years. The Justice Department has been busy since Trump announced in Davos that he will be seeking retribution against those involved in stealing the 2020 election. And what has happened? Yesterday, a warrant was issued, and our director of intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, went with the federal officers to Atlanta to confiscate voting machines from the 2020 election. Voting machines that were already examined 3 times by the Republican Secretary of State, Brad Roethlisberger, and his Republican staff. 3 times the vote was counted, 3 times it came up to the exact number of votes. Why is this important? Because this is a bellwether. It's the canary in the coal mine, folks. What Trump is going to do is interfere with the 2026 midterm elections. He's going to call them rigged on states that certain Republicans lose. He's going to confiscate voting machines. He's going to declare martial law. He's going to stop the election count from happening. And he's going to do the same thing in 2028. Um, Trump also, to further what Michael Luddick said he's going to sue the pollsters, which show him underwater with an unfavorable rating of 63% and a favorable rating of 37%, the lowest of any president of any term. It is his lowest approval rating of both his terms. He's going to sue them because he claims that they're false. He's also suing Jamie Dimon, who is the king of Wall Street, who was, for a time being, was being considered to be the federal treasury secretary, who is the oracle of Wall Street. Now that we don't have Warren Buffett, who's retired, um, Jamie Dimon is beyond reproach. He's suing him, and I think his bank, Morgan Stanley, because in 2020, after Trump interfered with the election results and was part of the insurrection, they dropped him, or they turned him down as a customer to be a loan customer, and they canceled his depository accounts. So Trump is now suing them for it. Seems to me there's a statute of limitations that if that was done in 2020, most states like South Carolina have a 3-year statute of limitations. J.P. Morgan, not Morgan Stanley. Um, Trump made some incredibly offensive and insensitive comments about NATO and the Afghan war. Remember, folks, Article 5 was invoked after 9/11, and all the NATO countries came to our aid to attack Afghanistan and Iraq. And Trump said, oh, when they went to Afghanistan, they didn't really participate on the front lines, that they hung back. Folks, 457 United Kingdom soldiers died in Afghanistan. And they went ballistic. Europe did over this. and I think they should. Trump tried to backtrack off his statement, but he just talks with a paper mache asshole, folks. He just spouts out stuff that pops into his mind that has no truth whatsoever. The Kremlin warned that its war in Ukraine would continue until its goals are met, and there could be no long term peace without resolving the territorial issues that they want. Trump has sent Steve Witkoff and his son in law, Jared Kushner. Folks, Jared Kushner is going to enrich himself so much over the next 3 years and over the next 5 to 10 years. He's already, his hedge fund, which is funded by $2 billion of Saudi Arabian money, and he himself was going to make a bid for Paramount when it's still for sale. He dropped out. He showed a rendering of what Gaza should look like, the Riviera of Gaza Strip. Guess who's going to get all those construction contracts? Guess who's going to get a piece of the pie? Jared Kushner. Now Jared Kushner's negotiating a cessation of the war with Russia and Ukraine, that there may be a demilitarized zone, just like there is between South Korea and North Korea. He's also going to negotiate his own contracts. Remember, there are the raw materials and minerals over there. So Jared Kushner isn't doing this because he's a great American. Yes, he is a smart kid for 37 years old, but he's doing this because he's lining his pockets. Remember, his father was a convicted felon, put away by Chris Christie when Chris Christie was the United States Attorney of New Jersey. If you ever have time, read about Jared Kushner's father, what he did to his sister-in-law, his sister, who he was at war with her husband, his brother-in-law. Just read about it. That'll tell you all you need to know about the Kushner family. Um, After Trump's EU speech, an EU diplomat over in Davos said, "Our American dream is dead. Donald Trump murdered it." Another senior envoy for from a country in Europe described as a key American ally suggested that all trust is lost with the United States. And it's good in a way because Europe's going to have to start relying on their own defense. They're going to have to put their own GDP into building up their defense, even though a lot of Europe leaders this week said there's no way we could ever defend ourselves without United States assisting it. We are experiencing a great rupture of the world order, someone said, and European Council needs to have a therapy session after Trump's speech to analyze its implications. Um, Trump says Ilhan Omar, who I do not like. I want you to know I do not like the squad. I do not like her. I don't like what she spews. I don't like her pro-Palestinian beliefs. I think that she knows more than what she's saying about the Somali fraud in Minneapolis. But she was attacked this week, folks, at a town hall meeting where somebody came up and squirted her with a very stinky liquid substance. Um, and It turned out to be apple cider vinegar. And Trump said that she probably staged the syringe attack. How could he say that? Why would he say that? It's not true. They're going to prosecute the guy that did it, as they should. Look, I don't agree with her beliefs, but folks, this is not the way to protest. This is not the way to challenge government officials. Um, a federal judge rejected Trump's DOJ bid to try to charge Don Lemon over the Minnesota church storming. Don Lemon is a journalist. Again, another guy I don't like. I think he's mouthy, um, but he has every right to cover it. And they said because he went in the church that he was part of the conspiracy to interfere with religious services, which is a crime. It is on the books. Thank God a federal judge said, sorry, Pam Bondi and your Gestapo DOJ, no, we're not going to bring those charges. Um, the feds are proving that former Indianapolis Colts owner Jim Irsay, um, like Perry um, from Friends. He died of a ketamine overdose and pain meds. Everybody knows that Jim Irsay loved guitars, but he also was an alcoholic. He was disciplined by the NFL um, for his drug use a couple of years ago. And so they are investigating it, and I think that they should. Um, President Trump's White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wild, actually defended Jeffrey Epstein's connection with Donald Trump. You know what he said? She said, well, they were young, single playboys together. That doesn't mean that you get to exploit women. That doesn't mean that you get to exploit underage girls. Um, President Trump said on Monday that he was increasing his tariffs on imported autos, pharmaceuticals, and lumber from South Korea from 15 to 25% because of their delay in the country's legislature of approving the trade deal that was reached last summer. Also, he's doing that with the EU because they are slow to actually finalizing the trade deal that was supposedly agreed to. And he's considering doing it with India. Um, Here's another thing. After receiving donations, pay to play, folks, pay to play, the Trump administration has revoked rules requiring more nursing home staff at nursing homes or adult care facilities. That's our greatest fear. My mother lives 5 miles from here in a Alzheimer's facility. Very sad. I don't see her as much as I should. I feel guilty every time I drive near. I just want to vomit to myself because I feel like I should be there. But she is doesn't know who she is. She recognizes me at times, but she sometimes doesn't even know my name. My fear is she sitting there in her own soiled diaper? Are they cleaning her bed? Are they mistreating her? My mom is very cantankerous, doesn't like to shower. And if they try to make her take a shower, I know that she has tried to hit them. Would they hit her back? With more nursing home staff and more staff at these adult care facilities and Alzheimer's facilities, it's less frustration for the people that are there. If you have a nurse or a caregiver that's caregiving just 2 or 3 people, that may be more manageable than somebody who has to care for 8. Can get very frustrating. Tempers can fly. Senator Amy Klobuchar announced that she is going to run for the governor of Minnesota. I'm heartbroken. I absolutely love Amy Klobuchar. I can listen to her talk all the time. She's brilliant. I thought she did a great job when she was running for president. She caught fire, but it was a little bit too late. She's going to be missed in the Senate. That tells me that she realizes that the institution's broken. Nothing is ever going to be accomplished during her term. There's no bipartisanship. There's no compromise. So I think a lot of these senators are realizing, like Tommy Tuberville and some of the representatives, like the one Mikey Sherrill, who's the new governor of New Jersey, and then the governor of Virginia, who was a former House member. They realize they can accomplish more as a chief executive of the state. I don't know why you would want to be one of 437 people in the House of Representatives as opposed to being the governor. I mean, certainly Nancy Mace, who I can't stand, who is unqualified, who I would absolutely die if he becomes our governor. She doesn't want to stay in the House anymore. She's running for governor. Used to be in the early 2000s, everybody didn't want to be a governor. They wanted to be a senator or a House member. Um, it was announced today that very senior members of Trump's staff have been having secret meetings with conservatives in Canada to separate uh, the government and draw it closer to the United States and for it to become either a United States state or have more favorable trade agreements with the United States. The covert meetings between high ranking U.S. officials and Alberta Prosperity Project come as a widening rift here between Canada and the United States. Canada, uh, Prime Minister Mark Carney, as I said, in Davos, Switzerland last week, to call out President Trump for creating a rupture in the existing world order. Trump issues an executive order assuming control of the Los Angeles wildfire. Um, how did he do that? He wants to rebuild it, which I do too. He says that they're too slow in issuing permits, which I agree. But the federal government can't take control over local building commissions and local building codes. It's sound and fury, folks. Looks like it's signifying something, but it's signifying nothing. Donald Trump is the person who caused January 6th. Jack Smith testified this last past week and earlier this week. He told the House subcommittee that Trump tried to intimidate witnesses, that they were prepared to come forward. These are government officials that Trump was intimidating to get their votes in their states to be changed. He told a witness that Trump had said, "You're going to end up being dead if you don't help me out." He said he had proof beyond a reasonable doubt to bring these charges and would bring the charges tomorrow. It was shocking testimony. He said he realizes that Trump is going to try to prosecute him, and he's waiting and can't wait to fight them. Um, Wall Street celebrated the end of Trump's Greenland tariff threats um, and expects that the Supreme Court will actually overturn Trump's tariffs. Um, this is an amazing statistic. President Zelensky of Ukraine announced that Ukrainian drones have neutralized over 80% of Russian targets that they had targeted, striking nearly 820,000 enemy positions in 2025 alone. With so much going on, people have forgotten about that war. Let's not forget about it. Um, Trump puppy Carolyn Levitt was slammed for lying again over United States murder rates, claiming that they've gone down, percentages that just aren't true. She has lost all credibility with the press. Obviously, she works for an audience of one, and that's Donald Trump. Um, this is interesting. The United Kingdom is preparing to surrender sovereignty over the Chagos Islands, a remote archipelago in the Indian Ocean that has long symbolized the afterlife of empire and the hard edge of Western power projection. As London steps back, the United States is moving to lock in its military footprint on these islands and turn a decolonization milestone into a fresh assertion of global reach. Um, ICE agents now are going into homes without obtaining warrants. That's the new uh, edict and directive from the White House. They do not have to get warrants. A 5-year-old is still locked up by DHS after being separated from his father. Um, Scott Jennings, who is on CNN, he's the lone conservative voice and a MAG rising star. Finally, through Catherine Levitt, Trump, Miller, and Nome under the bus, the proverbial bus, by saying they completely lied, they completely mishandled the aftermath of the Preddy shooting in Minneapolis. They should have never, ever insinuated that it was a defensive shooting. Um, Thought it was curious. I saw this morning that Trump has a picture of Putin and him uh, hanging in the invaded room. For, uh, put a picture up with a person who is despised by the free world. Um, Trump is his deployment of the National Guard throughout the United States in Oregon, California, Minnesota, and Maine. Although Susan Collins just announced that she negotiated with the White House and the National Guard is going to be taken out of Maine, has cost the taxpayers $500 million. Think about that, folks. $500 million in less than 6 months. Here's a sad fact. Blew my mind. The United States this week announced with fanfare a complete withdrawal from the World Health Organization. Now we're not going to cooperate with different countries in the world to find out if epidemics are on their way or if there are diseases that are running out of control. They're not going to share information with us, and we're not going to share information with them. Mark Lee is now a front runner for 2028. Thank you. Uh, uh, Pete Hegseth for coming after him. Kelly is raising millions and millions of dollars in connection with his um, senatorial campaign and with the 2028 run. A guy I would support, a former astronaut and a Purple Heart victim, a recipient, as well as a Navy fighter pilot. Um, Scott Bessent is a multimillionaire. He's the Treasury Secretary of this administration. And he drew backlash on social media after suggesting that children should no longer buy toys, but parents should take the money that they're going to spend for toys for their children and put them in the new Trump savings account where you could save the money tax free. Sorry, folks. Kids don't need money. Young kids under 10 need educational toys. Think it was a wrong thing for him to say. Bobby Hurley, his days at Arizona State are numbered. It's a shame. His brother Hurley at UConn. UConn's currently rated ranked second in the country. Bobby Hurley has just not done it well at Arizona State. Um, Ryan James Welding, who was a Canadian snowboarder in the early 2000 Olympics, was picked up this week. He was the number 6 on the United States 10 most wanted list, was a drug kingpin that worked with the Somalia drug cartels, and they called him a baby. Um, uh, uh, who was that drug dealer? I forget his name. Renee, what was his name? Oh, El Chapo, a baby El Chapo. Um, Outrage is growing in Italy over the deployment of ICE agents, as I said, to bolster the security at the United States Olympic. Um, Kash Patel, who continues to be a lapdog for Donald Trump, who's the head of the FBI, moved to fire multiple senior Bureau officials involved in investigations tied to President Trump, deepening concerns among career agents and civil liberty advocates about the political influence that Trump's using. Um, and he's gone after agents in New York, Florida, and New Jersey who were only doing their duties when they were investigating uh, President Trump in his first term for the insurrection, as well as after he presidency ended for the confidential documents case. USC women's basketball team lost a surprise game to Oklahoma, but they came bounced right back and knocked off number 5, Vanderbilt. I think it was a good wake up call for Dawn Staley as well as her team. Um, John Brody, who was a quarterback for the 49ers in the 70s before Joe Montana, he passed away this week. Very sad. Clemson had an interesting issue with Luke Farello, who is a linebacker who transferred from the portal to Clemson. He spent 2 weeks there. He signed an NIL contract. He went to classes. He participating in off-season workouts. He got an email address. And then Pete Goulding, the new coach of UMass, came after him, started calling him on the phone, and offered him a 2-year NIL contract and lured him away while he was under contract. Dabo Sweeney and the athletic director of Clemson rightfully did a press conference and said the NCAA needs to do something about this. Folks, that's poaching, that's interfering with a contract. I think it's disgraceful. Um, we had so much going on in the NFL this week. Joe Brady, who was the wonder kid when Joe Burrow won the national championship with Ed O'Gearian being the coach of LSU a couple of years ago. He spent 2 years as offensive coordinator with the Panthers and then 2 years with the Buffalo Bills. he is the new Buffalo Bills coach at 36 years old. He's going to have to find, somebody like a Wade Phillips, who was a former coach, to help him. Obviously, Josh Allen wanted him, but I think he is not a worthy substitute for Sean McDermott. I've already expressed it was a disgrace that he was fired, going 12-5 this year and playing in the AFC champion, made it to the AFC playoffs, won one game against Jacksonville, and then lost against Denver. Um, Also, the Cleveland Browns chose their new head coach. They Everybody wanted Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, um, but they selected Minter, not Minter, Todd Mulkin, who was the former offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. Um, so that was an interesting hire, folks. I cannot talk about this enough. The NFL really screwed up, and so did the Hall of Fame. It is an absolute disgrace. It's the biggest snub that I have ever seen that Bill Belichick was not a first ballot Hall of Fame member. You're talking about a guy that has gone to 10 Super Bowls as a coach and an assistant coach. He's won 6 as a head coach with the Patriots, 2 as a defensive coordinator with the New York Giants when Bill Parcells was the coach. I think it is unbelievable that he was passed over. His defense game plan with the Giants against the Bills in hard defensive plan is in the Hall of Fame right now. He came up with the dime package for defensive backs to deal with a passing, high-powered offense. And the Giants shut down and limited the Bills to 19 points. You know who was the general manager? Bill Polian. Bill Polian, who used to be the general manager of the Colts, was the general manager of the Bills before that. He hated Belichick for Spygate and Deflategate, and he was behind um, 11 people not voting or more. Remember, you got to get 40 out of the 50 votes. He was behind them not voting for Belichick. It could have been more than 11. And one voter came out and said the reason they did it is they had Roger Craig, who was a running back for the 49ers during the Joe Montana era, L.C. Greenwood, who was a worthy um, a defensive lineman for the Steel Curtain and the Steelers in the 70s that won 4 Super Bowls, because Mean Joe Green, Dwight What, Jack Ham, Jack Lambert, Mel Blount, Donnie Shell, all of them are in the Hall of Fame. L.C. Greenwood deserved it too. But they also put in Kenny Anderson, who was the former quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. Kenny Anderson went to 1 Super Bowl. Kenny Anderson didn't win a Super Bowl, but they are senior members who had to be put in this year, or they would have lost their chance to get in the Hall of Fame. If Bill Belichick is not a first team, a unanimous first time selection to the Pro Bowl, then no one belongs in the Pro Bowl. No one, folks. No one. He's second in victories to Don Shula at 333. It's inconceivable. You may not like him. I get it that the press doesn't like him because he was so nasty to them during press conferences. But not putting him in for that. You're putting him in for championships and his 1-loss record. I have never seen it. Look, Barry Bonds, um, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire, Roger Rocket Clemens, Pete Rose, they absolutely belong in the Hall of Fame, and so does Bill Belichick. I think the NFL needs to do something. Roger Goodell needs to come forward and right this wrong and make sure that Belichick gets in the Hall of Fame now and change the way that the vote has is calculated. Look, he had a $250,000 fine. He was suspended for games during Spygate. Look, you let in Richard Seymour from his team. You let in Ty Law. They benefited from Spygate. They were players and on the defense. So I think it's a disgrace. Um, does Mike Tomlin get in on his first ballot? He's only won one Super Bowl. Yes, he has a winning record every single year, but he's lost seven straight playoff games. Does he get in first before Belichick on his first year? Doesn't make any sense. Bud Selig, who was the commissioner during the steroid year, where you're keeping out Bonds, you're keeping out Clemens, you're keeping out um, McGuire and Sosa. He got in. He was the commissioner. How's that possible? Um, Sam Darnold, look at what he's done, folks. He is the first quarterback since Brady that has had back-to-back 14-win seasons. He did it last year for the Vikings. He did it this year for the Seahawks. I get it. The Seahawks versus the Patriots is not going to be an exciting Super Bowl compared to having it the Eagles versus the Chiefs. But Sam Darnold is a baller, folks. I think that Seattle's going to crush him. Drake May has not played well. He's had three straight bad playoff games with tons of turnovers, whether they're fumbles or interceptions. The whole Duke quarterback situation, he had to buy his way out of his NIL contract and signed another 3-year deal with Miami. Miami is paying huge bucks, $10 million for him. I think that's a real problem. The NCAA has real public relations problem. Um, Sabalenka, who is the number one tennis player in the world for females, is going to win the Australian Open. She was penalized some points this morning because of grunts. A couple years ago, I think it was Monica Seles. She was a grunter when she would hit her back in. Uh, well, the referee said that she is forcefully making grunts that were interfering. I have more to talk about from listeners, but I've been going for 51 minutes, so I'm going to save this for my next weekly update. Some of these questions, I think I covered a ton of territory. Um, I'm going to be in Colorado with Renee next week. We're going to ski for a couple days with friends, so I may not do a weekly update. Linda Limerick, who's listening, I appreciate so much. She said I'm right about the midterm. She has the same concerns that Trump is going to interfere with them, declare either martial law or suspend the elections, get a hold of the voting machines. Selena Pristine said, "What was Alex Murdaugh like in person? Scary. He has shark eyes. I've never seen it. You can't see his pupils. Um, they're dark. His eyes are dark, dark black. Um, he's very pale. He has a smirk on his face um, when he looks at you. Definitely a weird, scary dude. Uh, somebody that I'm friends with. Jay Bronski Shalona said, "What was my take on passing over Bill Belichick?" Well, I think you heard it. I think I was pretty clear about it. I think it's the worst decision that any Hall of Fame has ever made. Look, sports are suffering. The Pro Bowl is a joke. Shador Sanders, folks, made the Pro Bowl. And nothing against Shador. He's a good kid, probably. But, folks, his quarterback rating was the lowest in the NFL. He threw 8 interceptions against 2 touchdowns. He only won one game. Um, it, it's a disgrace that somebody like him made it to the Pro Bowl, but Andrew Thomas, who is a guard for the Giants from Georgia, who's had 2 really good seasons in a row, has never made a Pro Bowl. The All-Star games for NFL are a joke with flag football. With basketball, they're a joke. The only one that it's serious is baseball, and that's starting to wane. So that's my take on it. David Moses, brother Moses, Andre 3000. He's our producer for Cup of Justice. He says hello. Casey Odell, who we love. Our Casey Odell says, "Hey, Renee. Hey, EB." And Jody Salonis said, "So this is a football frustration of the winners. As you just stated, facts, facts, stats, stats, he rates. It's personal, political, obviously. Obviously, they are holding against it with his personality, with his cheating, and also I think Jordan Hudson, his 24-year-old girlfriend, has something to do with it. So um, it is what it is. Casey Odell says, "Hey, David Moses." David says, "Hey" to everybody, and that's it. Uh, I appreciate everybody listening. EB out. David said, "We're hoping to see you on Colorado if we can." Don't forget, Mandy and David have been crisscrossing the country as traveling vagabonds. They're going to do a travel show, and this year I can't wait to hear about it with all their different takes on different places that they've gone to. They're spending a month in Colorado with their dogs, Luna and Joe Pesky. Um, so that's it. We will have a couple of this episode coming out probably Monday. I think we're going to do it. David, I think we're doing it tomorrow night. Actually, we're going to record tomorrow night. So, everybody, be safe, stay warm. We love you, and I appreciate you. Take care.